Aha. So, Oksana, thank you for agreeing to give a talk on this post-medieval subject this time. Not medieval, but post-medieval, and and also it's a pleasure to see everyone here. So let's start.
Sorry, I have lost my presentation. This is it. Okay. Maybe I will say a few words about the talk and my talk in general. Yes, it will be dedicated to the post-medieval, as Danila has already said, post-medieval latent tradition of logic and its Russian reception in the 18th century, and to the history of formation of Russian logical terminology. As a philologist, I just wanted to trace how Makariy Pétrovich works with words, with different notions and concepts, and how he tries to elaborate the first Russian terminology, yes, using Latin and Greek prototypes. And he was the Serbian author who worked at the 18th century in Russia and left his homeland, Timisoara, in Romanian Banat, as far as I remember, at the beginning of the 1850s, to study first at Kiev Mahila Academy. He first studied at Kiev, and then at the Slavic, Greek, and Latin Academy in Moscow, where he became a teacher of philosophical disciplines, including theology and logic. His book, which is named Theoretical Logic, it was based on it was based not on the Aristotelian tradition, which was scholastic, yes, medieval, but on the contemporary to him European Wolffian and Cartesian logical texts. And I can go to the second slide. Yes, his prototypes of his logics was the at least three, maybe more books, the Institutiones by Baumeister, and his, so to say, Elementa, yes, the large and the short, two treatises, the large and the short, on logics, which you can see on the slide. And by Pourchaud, Institutiones also was in some parts for him more interesting than the text of Baumeister. So I was trying to focus on maybe on the process of adoption of Greek and Latin logical terminology, because Makariy Pétrovich translates the words not strictly. He tries to accommodate them to the Russian language, to the Slavic roots, yes, and I'm going to show that Makariy Pétrovich not only models the Russian words or Russian terms, yes, and constructions maybe after Greek and Latin patterns, but he carefully selects the different variants, yes, and sometimes he offers different options of translations, yes. For example, I will just show you some examples. So here on this slide you can see the three sources, the three main manuscripts of the Logical by Makariy Pétrovich. Here I maybe will, if you just do not mind, I will cite my colleague Maria Semikalennych. She was just working with these three manuscripts, and she really elaborated the critical edition of text by Makariy Pétrovich. Here, yes, you see, of these three manuscripts, the first one is the most complete. It is written in clear and beautiful cursive writing at the beginning of the second half of the 18th century. The manuscript is very elegant. I will show pictures. The headings and capital letters in it are written in the ornamental ligatured script. There are almost no blots or erasures. The manuscript contains 3 neatly executed drawings, Arbor Porphyry, Arbor Purhotsy, and the square of opposition. I will also show these images. Unlike the other 2 manuscripts, the one from St. Petersburg Spirit Academy collection, it has no gaps. It can be assumed that this handwritten book was prepared by special order, for example, as a gift to some high-ranking clergyman. The other 2 manuscripts are much more modest, so I will leave their description and return to my presentation to show you just the pictures, to show you the pictures of the manuscript. You see this is the title page. It is in Russian State Bibliothèque, and this is not very good photo of how the script, yes, looks like. And on the next picture, you can see the square of opposition translated into Slavic language by Pétrovich. Here I have found the prototype of the Porphyrian tree, Arbor Purhotsy, yes, in the textbook of Baumeister. So you can see here that Pétrovich really, or I don't know, scripter, not Makariy himself, yes, but somebody just have made the copy of the tree, even just saving the angles of the arrows, yes, but leaving the picture of the tree behind, yes, the logical construction. And I know that this picture is also, this is the Arbor Porphyry, yes, it is also copied from the textbook by Baumeister, but I failed to find it in Baumeister's textbook because maybe I have used some maybe not complete PDF version of Baumeister text. So maybe I don't know, maybe a few words about Makariy Pétrovich himself and maybe his education. It's better to maybe show you some facts from his education. Yes, I think that the most that influenced his education was the following historical circumstances: the German colonization and the spread of Catholicism in Banat determined the educational policy of Habsburgs in Banat region. The first elementary schools were organized for German immigrants. Pupils were taught reading, writing, and occasional arithmetic. They also got some basic religious education. As for the Orthodox Serbs and Romanians, they had much fewer opportunities for learning that time, and their children usually were only taught to read. And for the native population, there was no compulsory schooling at all. Regarding Makariy Pétrovich, it can be assumed that being a Serbian, yes, who was born in the family of an Orthodox priest, but almost 2 decades earlier, yes, he had even fewer opportunities to get an education without renouncing his faith. So probably this was that prompted him to come to Kiev in 1750 and enter the Kiev Mahila Academy, where many Serbians studied at that time. But 3 years later, he moved to Moscow, where after graduating from the Slavic, Greek, and Latin Academy, he took the monastic vows under the name Makariy and was appointed a teacher of rhetorics. Probably his father's path was largely determined by his friendship with Peter Petrov, the future metropolitan of St. Petersburg and Novgorod, who took the vows a year later under the name Gavril, and he became a rector of the St. Trinity Seminary and father superior of the Trinity Lavra of St. Sergius, and Gavril became an archimandrite a rector of the Slavic, Greek, and Latin Academy, and a father superior of the Zaikonospassky monastery. So shortly thereafter, Makariy Pétrovich took the post of the academic prefect. He taught the philosophy, philosophical history, logic, and some from metaphysics, ontology, cosmology, and psychology. And in 1763, Makariy was appointed a rector of the Tver seminary. According to Kolosov, he set an example for other teachers who was also began teaching in Russian. And as a result, thanks to the attention of Makariy Pétrovich, Tver seminary was the first to embark in this new and more fruitful faith, occasionally recognized only several decades later. So this is the source on the history of his life, on his biography. And maybe I will quote a little bit from my colleague Maria Semikolenных about maybe about the structure of this logic by Makariy Pétrovich, and after that I will continue with my personal examples. Yes, how he works with the terminology. I don't know what is crucial here. Maybe about his predecessors of Makariy. Yes, Teofilakt Lopatinsky, Jan Kozlovich, Vladimir Calligrapher. And about the structure, No, maybe not, not at this file, I'm sorry. So let's just see how he works with terminology. Using my example, I just want to show you maybe the most elaborated example in which I try to show how he works and how he tries to find the Russian or Slavic equivalents just to translate the Latin words imperia, Greek imperia, Latin experientia, or for example, Latin experiment. Yes, so in his book, I have compared the number of uses of each of these words. Yes, in Russian, trying to translate the empirical or experimental or experientia in general. Yes, we use the word, for example, opыт. Yes, in the 18th century Russian, it also was used the word iskus. It is not the word which just received to nowadays as Russian scientific terminology. Yes, we now have the word opыт, yes, as the term. But Makariy Pétrovich tries to use iskus, and it has 26 occurrences, yes, in his treatise. Opыт has 21 occurrences. Experientia, just transliterated into Russian, like experientia, it has 11 occurrences, as you see, and experiment has 5 occurrences, yes, or experiment, Latin experiment. And the Greek word empiria never occurs, unfortunately for me, never occurs in Pétrovich, though Baumeister uses it word frequently. So it appears in Baumeister's and is translated by Pétrovich in Russian, yes, by means of Latin equivalents. So let us look at each word just as it is. So let's start with iskus. Here, first of all, I try I would like to mention that Pétrovich uses the word iskus mainly in the most general sense of experience or even sophistication in general. For example, повседневный искус, I'm trying to translate it in English like our everyday experience, not the scientific term, yes, but something, so to say, very general. Искус ведет к познанию, it means our experience leads to knowledge. Понеже искус нас научает, because our experience teaches us. Мы искусом дознались, что огонь жжет. We know by experience that the fire burns. Многие сим лестным искусом в поползновение приведены. Many of us are tempted by this experience. I here would like to mention that the word iskus is also close to the word temptation. Yes, because the devil tries to tempt us. Yes, and iskus, it is not only the term, yes, in logic, but also the term in Christology and in theology. So it is just have some connotation. It has some connotations for us in Russian. So that's why it is not a very good word to denotate, yes, the something maybe strictly terminological. And that's why he uses this word iskus in the most general sense of the word experience. However, one can find a number of examples that, a number of examples of the use of this word precisely as a term, meaning scientific experience, yes, or experiment, even experiment. And sometimes this word stands for the Latin experiment in Baumeister texts. For example, искус или эксперимент имеется у всех ученых за матерь всея философии. Experience or experiment for them is the mother of all philosophy. Ко всякой известности мы двоякою стезею доходим, искусом и доказательством. We reach a knowledge by a twofold path, by experiment and proof. Here he opposes experiment and proof. In Russian language it means искус и доказательство, like two levels of scientific knowledge. Сие экспериментальное или искусом примечает чувствительные вещи, приобретенное познание, иначе называется познание из последующих. This experimental or noted by skillful mind knowledge of things is otherwise called a posteriori. And here I would like to mention and to just to note that here he uses two Russian synonyms, экспериментальное and искусом примечая. Yes, I tried to just translate it into English as experimental for experimentальное and skillful, yes, skillful, like the translation, the possible translation of iskus, because in Russian we have also the following connotation of the word iskus, not only the temptation, but also the something artificially or technically made. Yes, for example, if a man has some skill, yes, he could be said that.
Oh, Oksana, I'm sorry. I think we. Can everyone hear Oksana well? Something happened to the sound, I thought.
Yes, sorry, I will just re-record. Sorry, I will.
It's very low. Isn't it? Or is it just in my case? No, right. Oh, sorry. Yes, now it's okay.
Can you hear me?
Better.
No?
Yeah, better, yes.
Better. I may, for example, just switch on the telephone, if you wish.
No, it was fine till a moment ago when the sound suddenly dropped. So it might have been a problem with the microphones.
Okay.
Falling.
Let us proceed further. So at the same time, it should be noted that Pétrovich himself is fully aware of the ambiguity of the word iskus and even classifies its various uses. For example, yes, искус разделяется еще на простой или общенародный, и на осмотрительный и артифициальный. So skillfulness is further divided into simple or popular and circumspect and artificial. And so искусственный, we have, for example, искусственный for artificial in Russian language now. So the word искус in its connotation, which is connected to the idea of being skillful, yes, also just turned to the term искусство as the opposition of the nature. Yes, something is artificial, something is natural. Yes, you see. So the искус didn't manage to stay in the terminological apparatus of the modern logic. Yes, but it was widely used in the 18th century, not only by Makariy Pétrovich. For example, although notes that these three words could be used as synonyms, yes, as synonyms. For example, искус, опыт и экспериенция у нас единое имеют знаменование. So you see, skillfulness, experience, and experientia have the same sense for us. This is the translation of one of his passages. There are some contexts when choosing one of these words, but not the others, is necessary. So you see, for example, of course, he admits that it could be used, all these words could be used as synonyms, but sometimes they do not. They cannot, yes. For example, in the paragraph 146, Pétrovich notes that we только то искусом постизаем, что бытие свое имеет и опыт. Just by the experience we comprehend that something has its own being and its own ability to be perceived. So here I just translate this Russian word опыт as an ability to be perceived, but not as experiment, yes, not as a scientific term, yes, not the term which means experiment. If we turn to the relevant paragraph of Baumeister's textbooks, in Institutiones Philosophiae, paragraphs 352 and 353, and Elementa Philosophiae, paragraph 161, we will see that the Russian expression «постизать искусом», so to say, to comprehend using skills, yes, translate the Latin «exterior», or to try to test. And Russian «что имеет свой опыт», yes, to have ability to be perceived, translates the Latin pro objecto habere experience. So maybe here he does not have a task to just translate Baumeister. Yes, he just used his text maybe to form his own passages. So the text by Makariy is not the, strictly speaking, it is not the translation of Baumeister texts. So he just sometimes make mistakes. He sometimes just interrupt the syntactical constructions. Yes, sometimes he does not understand, yes, these constructions, and of course he plays with morphology sometimes. Here a little bit more examples, but not with искус, but with the second variant for experientia in Slavic, using the Slavic root opыт. Opыt is the second word I would like to pay your attention at. And although the word opыт, or experience in general, it means in Russian, if not in terminological way, it means experience in general. This word is also used in various senses. Most often, Pétrovich understands it as the ability of the soul to have an experience, or the ability to perceive. In terminologically more rigorous senses, for example, in the meaning of experiment as a scientific method, he prefers to use искус and the experienция. So here are some examples. Понеже всякое чувство или понятие наше есть внутреннее или внешнее, того ради и самый опыт разделяется на внутренний и внешний. Since every feeling or concept of ours is internal or external, the very experience is divided into internal and external. So you see here the feeling even could be the synonym, yes, to the concept of опыт. Опыт here, опыт as perception. Внутренним опытом дознал или внешним опытом дознал. To find out by internal or external experience. Ты опытом, что огонь греет, дознал. You have by experience found out that the fire burns. Мы нечто дознались опытом и чувствием. Мы помощью чувствия и опытов вещей приобретаем познание. We learn something by experience and feeling, or maybe it's better to translate perception. Yes, by experience and perception. We gain knowledge by means of perception, yes, and experiences of things. Все, что опытом дознаем, само состоит вещью, следовательно, есть вещь особная. Everything that we know by experience is itself a thing, therefore individual thing. Когда ты опытом желаешь знать то, что содержимое в понимаемой вещи видишь, естественное ли есть свойство или случайное оное вещи. When you want to know by experience what you see in the thing, whether there is a natural property or an accidental one. Хотя и понятие, и рассуждение, here I should mention that by the term рассуждение, Pétrovich translate not the term deduction, yes, but the term statements. Хотя и понятие, и рассуждение помощью чувств и опытов составленная суть особная, однако это особное мы можем переменить на универсальное. Although concepts and statements composed with the help of perception and experiences are special, we can change this special to universal, and so on. Pétrovich often uses the word opыт as a synonym for the Latin a posteriori. He translates in Russian a posteriori as из последующих, and here he writes из последующих или помощью опытов рассуждение зрительное. I just try to translate it as follows: the statements about what could be perceived. Yes, here is the sorry, there is a mistake in slide. Be perceived. Yes, statements about what could be perceived are statements a posteriori. Когда предложение самым утверждается опытом и чувствами, тогда называется доказательство от последующих или от последующих. If the proposition itself is confirmed by experience and senses, then the proof is called a posteriori. There are also cases when opыт is used in a more strict terminological context, precisely as a synonym of experiment. Here is the two occasions where it is used in such a way. Сие иначе ты не сделаешь, как когда опыт или эксперiencию в помощь себе призовешь, и по вышеписанным правилам ты сделаешь опыт. You will not do this in other wise than by experiment or experiment. Here I just do not know how to translate it in Russian, because in Russian we have опыт или experience. In English it is the experiment or experiment, because here he uses опыт in terminologically strict sense of experiment. So according to the above rules, you will create an experiment. So here he just means something, experiment as something artificial, which we do when we try to test something in artificial conditions. Yes. So the last example with опыт. Удостоверяет или доказательством, или опытом. Here to verify by the proving or by the experiment. So this is the two different ways of proving in science. The third variant how to translate Latin experientia is the transliteration of experiencia. So sometimes he is not so to say, he is not satisfied with these two Slavic words, opыт and iskus. And sometimes he thinks that just to show the maybe strict sense of the word experientia, it's better to use itself. just only transliterating it in Kirillitsa. The next is the list of the frequent use of the word experientia, by which Pétrovich means not experience in general, but specific single statements based on experience. So in some senses, sometimes in Latin, we use experientia just as the logical status of some statements of our theory. Yes, for example, you see, here I just didn't manage to translate it. I didn't have time enough, yes, to do it. I will just translate it to you just orally. Только от известных выводить начал, то есть от определений, аксиомат и экспerienций. It means that we should deduce something only from some elements, yes, which are definitions, axioms, and experientia. So you see here he uses experientii in the plural form. So here I just can suppose that the experientia here is the single statement which describes some single experience. So this is here experientia is not the experience in general. Here it is the concrete statement of concrete theory. For example, that fire burns. Yes. So this is the experientia, and axiom, for example, it is for example, axiom of Euclidean geometry and some definitions which you can just also classify as statements. Yes, some statements which lay in the basis of your theory. So here experientia is the single statement based on experience. I just decided to translate it as follows. The next example. Следственно за предлежащее или объект экспириенции не универсальные, но точью особные вещи и партикулярные почитаются предложения. Here also you can see the occurrence of the word experientia in the sense of a single statement. So the subject or an object of experientia, yes, not universal experientia, so this is an individual statement, yes, because it individual things or particular things is expressed here, yes, in this statement named experientia. The third example. Подпорами подкрепляется доказательство. Сюда принадлежат определения, аксиоматы и экспириенции. So here the word experiency comes in the list of definitions, axioms, and the experientia, yes. И прочее довольно доказанное предложение. So here he just denotes the experientia as the statement. You see, as in the previous example too. The next. На каком основании, на каком основанный фундаменте, который никак колебаться не может, то есть на экспириенции, на определениях, на аксиоматах. Here you can see also the three possibilities for us, for our knowledge to be based on. It could be based on axioms, on definitions, or on experientia. Ничего без доказательства не пропущено, кроме экспириенции известных определений аксиомов. So, for example, we just can live without the proving the three logical statements, yes, which have the logical statement of definitions, of axioms, and the experientia. So one can witness here that Pétrovich's word experientia is not always synonymous with experiment, because sometimes he uses this word in some senses in which the experiment, yes, experiment could not be used even in Latin, even in Russian. Or, for example, experience, или опыт, or опыт, and skillfulness, or искус. The last what I want to tell you about the experientia is that the word experience, the word experientia, yes, Here on the slide, it should be not experience, but the Russian word experience. The word experience is also used less often, but used in 3 other meanings of the experimental method. As a synonym for a posteriori experience, as an experience in general, so really as the synonym of opыт in Slavic, or as a method opposite to theoretical proof. For example, или от последующих, то есть с помощью чувств и экспириенций, или от предыдущих, то есть с помощью доказательств, either a posteriori, that is by means of perceptions, and experiences, or a priori, that is by means of proofs. The fourth word is experiment or experiment. This why I just do not understand why the Russian prototype is also on the slide. So I will just start with English. The word experiment or experiment is less used than experientia, and only in a strict terminological sense. This is the only word which is not used in general, but only in strict terminological sense, in contexts that are explicitly determined by translation from Latin. So where he just maybe fears to make some mistake, yes, if he will use some Slavic roots. For example, there are some maybe established cliches, some set expressions, or some list and classifications which he takes from Baumeister or Purshaw's texts. For example, искус или эксперимент имеется у всех ученых за матерь всея философии. Here, искус or experiment is, for example, is understood by scientists as the mother of all philosophy, So as far as I know, this is the citation from some citation, yes, some Latin widely used citation. So he just leaves it to be translated by using experiment, but here he also just adds the word iskus also, maybe thinking that it also could be used as the synonymous construction. Некое понятие, как ученым, так и неученым, приличествуют, а иная одним только ученым свойственна, и оная помощью экспериментов постизается. So here he notes that some concepts only by the help of the experiments, could be known. Однако, если ты помощью физических экспериментов, что воздух тяжесть в себе имеет, дознал, то уже сие непростое есть действие, но одним ученым приличное. So maybe if you know that the air has a weight, it was the result of some artificial experiment. Yes, so here he, by the word of experiment, denotes the scientific experiment, not the experience in general. And I would like to finish the example of this list of the synonymous words with the Greek word empiria. Pétrovich, for some reason, does not use the Greek word empiria and does not translate it into Russian as empirический or empirical, although in Baumeister's Latin prototype, sometimes it occurs and is used to denote the experimental method divided by Baumeister into empirical and rational. So, for example, psychologia, cum empirica, tum rationali, so it can be assumed that using the word empirический or experimental or empirical, yes, he is trying to convey the difference between the Greek empirical and the Latin experientia. In Russian, it looks like психологию, знания о душах, как и экспериментальную, так и рациональную. although in Latin text you have empirica cum empirica tum rationale. Psychology, knowledge about souls as experimental and as well as rational. So thank you.
Thank you, Oksana. That was very interesting. And now questions.
I just while you are thinking about questions, I can show you that I work not only on this example. Yes, we are trying to make the dictionary. Yes, to make the dictionary of such process of finding the best variants. Yes, for translation. So, for example, the word искусственный or artificiальный comes for artificial. And sometimes he even uses the word художный. It means, I don't know, the arts is художество in English. Yes, we just have two translations, just two forms, just to translate, for example, into Russian, the Greek techne, yes, the Greek techne. And the Latin art, yes, you see. So Greek techne is artificialной, and the Latin artificial is really художный in our Slavic forms. So it's very interesting that sometimes we translate Greek words by the I don't know, some mediation of Latin translations. But sometimes one author translated some terms strictly from Greek, and sometimes by the mediation of Latin translations or Latin equivalents. Yes, so in Russia we may have, for example, three words to translate the same term. Yes, the same meaning. Or, for example, физической, натуральной, естественной. These are three different words just to translate physical, it is физической, yes, natural, натуральной, and purely Slavic word, yes, естественной, and so on. Yes, Mikhail.
Thank you, Oksana, very much. As a Russian scholar, I expect to see more archaic Slavonic terminology, as in the old translation of John of Damascus Dialectics and translation of Andrew Kurbsky. But I see only three terms: osoba. This term was translated in Damascus as indivisible, непресекомое in Slavonic. And I see the term osoba. As far as I know, this word was entered in Slavonic by Kurbsky in his translation of dialectics and Institute Elementaris at Dogmata. But I have a question to you about the terminology of general concepts or universal, because I see the word естество. Yes, it's ancient Slavic words, and we know it from the 10th and 11th centuries of Slavonic language. And what about this?
Yes, Mikhail, thank you very much. May I first comment on the root особый? Yes, in Pétrovich I have found at least 6 different variants just to translate the individual, yes, individual or atomos, yes, into Russian. So you hear the empty table. You can see here empty table because it is my plan, yes, to just elaborate these terms also as I have done with the Experimentia, ISCUS and OPET and so on. So you can see 6 different Slavonic, partly transliterated terms, which he used to translate the Greek, the Latin individual and the Greek atoms. For example, единичные, индивидуальные, атомарные, особные, нераздельные, раздельные. So here he in different contexts he prefers, I don't know just why, but he prefers sometimes to use, for example, the Greek-like word atamarnia, sometimes the Latin-like word individualnia, and I'm trying to find some, just have forgotten закономерности. I'm trying to find the maybe some rules, yes, some rules which determine his choices in each particular case, yes. And the second part of your question was on, sorry, I have forgotten.
Yes, I have an additional question. What about the hylomorphic terminology? Does the text include it?
Terminology of the previous authors, which just also could be classified as the Russian reception of logical terminology, yes? The translation of Damaskin.
No, about the terminology of form and matter of 2 Aristotelian causes.
Oh.
Yes, because in the old version of Church Slavonic philosophical language, there are many variants of translation of these words. For example, the term morph or schema could be translated as zrak, which also mean not only the form and philosophical sense, but also the visible image and the icon, for example. And the term obraz, which also meant the word image, icon, in more abstract sense. And the term form, generally Latin form, was introduced by Kievan Metropolitan in 17th century in his translation of sacramentological treatises of post-Trident missals. For example, they used the Thomistic schemes, included the form, matter, and intention. And they borrowed it from, literally. In Latin form and in Slavonic, there are form 2, and materia, and intention. What about such terms in work of Pétrovich, because the term form is also there, as I far know, was defined in Greek logic literature as the most specified form of universe.
Yes, I just can show you the table which is dedicated to the word idea. Yes. So idea by Pétrovich ничем не разнятся от понятия. Yes, so the ideas are equal to concepts for him in some contexts. Yes, not even every time. For example, he can translate the transliterated idea, yes, because Baumeister also uses in Latin Greek word, yes, he uses Greek word idea. So Pétrovich also just following the Baumeister text also uses idea as just only transliteration. But after saying by Baumeister that ideas are equal to concepts, yes, he just tries to make the Slavic понятие, yes, just to make this translation possible. After that, for example, we can, this is, for me personally, this is the main, I don't know, the main logical issue which I'm interested in, just comparing Aristotle and Plato. Because Aristotle just uses the word idea sometimes in Plato sense form, yes, a form, and sometimes in his own logical sense as species, yes, as species in as opposed to genera. So in different contexts, I think not only me but different authors also sometimes do not understand this difference, because sometimes because of course for Aristotelian for Aristotelian sense we could not use idea, yes, as opposition to genera. So that's why I think the Latin translations also elaborated the special term for Aristotelian terminology. But sometimes Pétrovich uses idea. Sometimes he uses eidos. I just did not compare all the occurrences, yes, but my hypothesis on the today is that idea he uses when in Baumeister he has idea as transliteration. He uses vid when in Latin text we have the word species, and he uses eidos when Baumeister uses eidos. So sometimes it. I will just I will try to check it in some time.
Thank you very much, Oksana.
Yes, if I may add a question to what you've discussed. There's in one of the texts I saw особенные вещи и партикулярные. They go like particular things and particular. So what did he mean by that? Just singulars and particulars without any clarification. That was on the slide with set not idioms, but list of quotations where you didn't have a translation into English, closer to the end of.
Maybe I should open the slide. Yes.
Yes, you can open. I think it's the preceding one. Yes, the second quotation here. Но точно особенные вещи и партикулярные почитаются предложения. So he distinguishes between the two, but it's not clear.
I think I'm not sure that in this particular context, yes, whether he distinguishes because he uses the connection "e", yes, but if to look on the picture in general, yes, sometimes, yes, we have, for example, these three distinctions, yes, universal, particular, and individual. Sometimes he uses the word особная, yes, особная. Sometimes he uses as particularная. I can prove it just if I will just have a time to find the particular quotations, yes. Sometimes he just uses особная, yes, as the equivalent of единичная. Individual.
And what's the difference between the particulars and the individuals in his case? I wonder.
In the case of this particular sentence, yes.
Well, I mean, well, generally for Makariy, for Pétrovich and I don't know, in medieval texts, these are very often the same. In particularibus could mean in singularibus, basically. in many contexts. So it depends on the context largely. I wonder what's meant here is particular related to propositions, and individuals are individuals. Is that the case here?
Maybe just he tries to oppose here the universal ones, yes, to those which are individual and particular. But my hypothesis, yes, here is that особенное here and particularная, yes, here, they could not stand here as synonyms, but maybe as a opposition to universalное, to universal.
Mm-hmm. Well, perhaps he just repeats that, and so it's one.
Maybe universal ones they could not be the object of experientia. Yes, only universal ones, but in our in some sense particular also could not be the object of experience, because only singular, yes, only individual statements could be the object of experience.
And could it be that in this sentence it's particularные почитаются предложения? So particular is referred to prepositions, and особенные вещи is more general, like particular things more generally. It could it be that? Could be that. I don't know.
I think we should look to the context.
Yes, we certainly
the paragraph for the whole paragraph.
Yes. Now, may I ask, Елена Лисанюк, yes. Yep. Yeah.
Thank you, Danila. Thank you, Oksana. I was impressed by your discussion, and then I first start with the suggestion. Could it be that there is a distinction between universal and particular propositions referring to some objects? So not from the angle of theological form, but from the angle of the objects that are considered there, in an existential ontological way. That just, I thought it might be the case, but I don't know. You are right, you have to check. But my question is different. I saw here you refer известных определений axiomat. So how about purely logical terminology? What are those axiomаты? What would be умозаключение or рассуждение in the terminology used by Makariy? Something what we use today in traditional routine logic courses. Does he have something of that sort?
Yes, Елена Николаевна, thank you very much for the questions. Yes, I have mentioned that he uses our рассуждение not in the sense of deduction, yes, as we just are used to use it today. He uses рассуждение as суждения, yes, as statements. So the chapter which is dedicated to the propositions or statements or judgments, or how to say it in English, yes, it is named рассуждения. Sometimes it is very hard to read it because I just instinctively just understand this word another way. That's why you should just every time remember, and you should just use the part of your operative memory, yes, to just translate it to the modern Russian logic language, because the modern Russian logic language does not coincide with the logical language of the 18th century. So, for example, even here, he uses For example, sometimes the verb рассуждать as the synonym to вывожение чинить. So you see in our modern sense, but it is only very few occurrences. In general, he uses this word as суждение, And if I just don't remember, maybe I have the table about our modern рассуждение or вывождение, or maybe I didn't just create it. You see here пропозиция, произношение, извещание, предложение, рассуждение. This is all are the synonyms for statement, proposition, or position or judgment. Yes. So no, unfortunately, I didn't just manage to go just to show you how he translated вывод, yes, дедукция. Maybe I have missed it. I think I will look, Elena Nikolaevna, and you.
And what are consequences? Here you have in your document consequences. What are those? What is it? The term translated? Consequences, just consequentia.
Следствие. He translated as следствие, or he uses just only the transliteration консеквенции. Yes, for example, кои консеквенции или следствия предвидит и предрассуждает.
I see. And how about those axiomata? What are those axiomata? Just like axioms, or they are the rules, maybe sometimes.
Wait a little.
Here you have them.
He also uses sometimes axioma, axiomata, axiomat. Yes, he just he make the inclination just by Greek inclination, not by the Slavic one. So axioma for him, it is the word of the even the gender of the word, yes, even switches. So in today Russian language, we use axioma as a feminine, yes, gender word. And in his axioma is the neutral gender word. So that's why he inclines it just using Greek inclination. And he uses it's as follows. Yes, maybe I will just read my. I just compared the gender of the word and the inclinations. Yes. So I didn't notice that some specific sense of using this word. He uses it in the strictly sense of Greek axioma as a logical term. Yes, as to express the logical status of some statements. Yes, some statements could be definitions, some statements could be axiomas, yes, and axioms, and some, for example, experientia.
I see. But what is your general impression? I always had an impression that Russian terminology comes from two sources, arrived from the West with Aristotelian logic through Latin sources, and part of it through Byzantine books. But it's somehow very peculiarly mixed. But what is your general impression? Because this is one of those very important, I see, Byzantine books, out of which we can see how it developed into nowadays Russian terminology in logic. What would be your general impression? What really were the roots of arriving those terms into Russian usage in logic?
Yes, Elena, thank you very much for your question, because I think it's the crucial question why just we are studying it for. Because I can, for example, I can say that we have two logical terminological traditions in Russia. One of them was formed by the educational institutions, yes, and of course it used Latin prototypes since the 18th century. But before the 18th century, we had the translation of those theological texts, those not Latin but Byzantine, yes, theological texts, which used in prefaces, yes, or in the contents of the tractata, which used the Greek terminology. So this is the dialectics of John of Damascus. It was translated into Slavic in the 15th century, and the first maybe earlier, but the only just remained manuscripts are the manuscripts of 15th century. As far as I know, the first translation were maybe in 11th century too, but we can only judge just using these translations of dialectic of John of Damascus, and the history of its translations is studied by Valery Vladimirovich Vorobyov. Every our conference, he just tries to show us also different tables, how in different languages different traductions of these words were established. For example, even we have, for example, the southern manuscripts, and sometimes more Eastern manuscripts, and there are even different routes to translate the terms of predicables, for example. Yes, for example, our Ukrainian colleagues from Kyiv University, they even say that we can, using this different translation of Porphyrian predicables, we can even manage to distinguish between ancient Russian and ancient Ukrainian languages, because even terminology in these regions of the same Greek text were translated differently. I don't know whether we can whether we have already such tables. The only tables I have seen was the tables in Styazhkin textbook on the history of logic, where he just showed a table with very few examples, And of course, if Valery Vladimirovich, with the help of our Slavists from the Moscow University, will just manage to do the complete tables with all logical terminology, this will be the great result of our project. But unfortunately, I'm not the part of this project. I just try to study now the logic by Lihudas. We are just trying to translate it into Russian. But the Greek logic of Lihudas also has the Latin part, because it was written at the same time in Greek and Latin. But we have the, as in case with synopsis by Mikhail Psel, yes, Mikhail Psel, we have the Latin prototype, yes, the Summa by Peter of Spain. And some scholars are just arguing whether the Greek was the prototype or the Latin text, and there are some arguments that Latin was a prototype. Some can argue that the Greek was the prototype. For example, Larisa Grachiko-Natanayan have written several papers on this topic. But in case of Lihudas, I think that we can argue that Greek text was the prototype. This text was written in the Greek Slavic Greek Latin Academy in Moscow. And this text, because brothers Lihudas were the students of Gerasimos Plach in Padua, in Italy, they could study in Greek. They could study logic only in Greek, because the textbooks of Gerasimos Plachas, they are written in Greek. And Gerasimos Plachas was the Byzantine immigrant, yes, who came from Byzantine Empire just to Italy and stayed, and he tried to develop Byzantine education, yes, there. So that's why they could, for example, create these two textbooks simultaneously, but using as a prototype the Greek text by Gerasimos Plachas. So I'm just trying to translate this text into Russian, and Lydia Spiridonova and Andrei Kurbanov, they are preparing the first critical edition of this Greek text, only Greek text, unfortunately. Maybe somebody sometimes will add the Latin critical edition to it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Any more questions? Well, I would have one, very general one, because I think I've missed that. Is this work translation in the exact sense, in the proper sense of the word, translation of Baumeister, or is it a compilation from two works with, so in other words, does the author add anything from himself to to all this in terms of content, not just in variety of translating different words?
I think that it is only my hypothesis. I think because we did not manage to prove it strictly, I think that his textbook is a pure compilation. It has no parts which, maybe some examples are his personal examples, yes, some illustrations, maybe not. But the way which he structures it, and the way in which he tries to translate and to work with terminology is original. It is, of course, it is the matter of interest because we have managed to identify all of the abstracts, not abstracts, all the paragraphs, all the parts which correspond to Baumeister and Fourchon, because we have all these textbooks just read. But now we have several non-identified parts, and we are trying to identify them. Maybe we have several hypotheses. Maybe some of the logical works in Kiev Mahila Academy, yes, they could be partly prototypes too. I hope I just have hope that maybe some passage I can identify just using the textbook of Lihudas, because it is proved that the Greek text of Lihudas, in Greek and Latin text of Lihudas, were in his bibliothèque, and we really have maybe 2 or 3 very suspicious passages which can be found in Lihudas, but I have no Lihudas text just by now because Lydia and Andrei are just finishing it, and I will try to find it also there. Or maybe we can look through the Latin textbooks of Makariy Petrovich colleagues, because some of his contemporaries in Russia also developed also developed the logical textbooks in Latin at that time. He was the pioneer of the Russian translation and Russian education. Being Serbian himself, yes, he just was the enthusiast of translating all of it into Russian.
Aha, thank you. And now, yet another, if I may, short question. I wonder what was there in the Latin text in place of experientie, in the case of single prepositions, well, just prepositions verified by experience.
If my memory doesn't fail me, maybe I just didn't understand your question in a proper way, but I have remembered that he used the word singularная too, not only individualная, but singular.
But this is a noun, not an adjective. This is, well, never mind. Anyway, but it's just remarkable that these experiences as prepositions, that what I thought was rather strange. I'm just wondering what it was in Latin.
I can explain that the experience as prepositions. It means that when we, for example, have some experience, we can, it could be noted as a single preposition. For example, if I perceive the fire, I perceive this concrete individual fire. Yes, so in this sense, these experientia are the single statements, yes, are individual.
Oh, that's interesting, but what was there in the Latin text from which he compiled? He translated it from somewhere, or does it belong to the passage, but non-identified passage?
No. I know whether this one was identified by me, but sometimes even Baumeister, when just writes about singular prepositions, yes, he just uses synonyms. He writes singular at singularibus at individu. I just don't remember how it in Latin, yes, but singular and individual statements.
Oh, right. So in place of
Pétrovich wants to just play with synonyms too, because Baumeister has already played it.
Right. So Pétrovich put experientie in place of in singularibus or something like that.
Singular statements. Singular statements
Baumeister,
depicting experience. Yes, depicting experience. Not the singular statements in general, yes, but those singular statements which express our, for example, concrete individual experience.
So wouldn't that just be an empirical statement about, just an empirical statement?
I think because Pétrovich didn't use the word empirical, maybe he didn't understand the distinction and why did Baumeister preferred to use in Latin letters, yes, to write empirical.
Okay.
Yes, I don't know. Maybe he didn't understood. That's why he didn't use. But he understood that it is a synonym in some sense. Yes.
So in other contexts, that's very interesting. I have another question about translation. Sorry, this is all new to me, and definitely my Russian is not up to the task here. I was thinking about Iescus. You underlined how there is a sense of temptation, like there is a use connected to the lexicon of temptation, which is actually common also in the Latin tradition when you talk about testing. So, like, is there that type of connotation, like trials and tribulations, when you say like a clinical trial that has to do with experience, with experimental, but it comes from that vocabulary of testing and temptation? Does it have this particular connotation in Iescus, or is it particularly common?
Yes, I think it has this particular connotation as opet, the word opet, connotation with the word pytka, torture.
Okay.
Yes, this is the same maybe in Latin. Yes, because Iescus, it is the word which is used maybe in some theological contexts, yes, but opet, it is the word which is used in some maybe many more general contexts. Opet.
Okay.
Пытать, yes, it is not only in Russian to torture somebody, yes, but also to make questions, yes, to stand questions. Испытать, да? Испытать.
Thank you.
Andrea Martin.
Hi, thanks for the talk. I also had a question about the how ambiguous iscus is as a term, because I was thinking about the ambiguities in the English experience, and also I think in Latin terms experience, yeah, where you might say something like, Mary has 2 years of forklift experience, where that seems to mean something like skill with a forklift. It could also mean something like just acquaintanceship with the forklift. And I was wondering if like there's a similar ambiguity in iscus, or if iscus really is more like skill with, or can it also just mean something like acquaintanceship, where one can have sort of a single act of acquaintance or acquaintance over time. So it's sort of ambiguous whether or not it's happening at a single time, or you say it's experience because it's, oh, well, in the past, there was a lot of this.
Thank you. Yes, I think that iscus is very, I think that for today Russian language, iscus is not ambiguous. Iscus stayed for the theological sense of the temptation. Yes, for today we do not use it in logical sense. And for the time of Pétrovich, of course, it was ambiguous. That's why sometimes he uses synonyms, just iscus или experientia, and he just he feels himself obliged, yes, just to explain in which sense he uses iscus now. Also, thank you very much for your question, because I have remembered due to it that I did not answer the second part of the question of Elena Nikolaevna about two traditions of translation of logical terminology into Russian. We have Byzantine logical terminology into Russian because first of all and first and foremost, of course, we translated the theological texts, theological Byzantine texts, not logical. The logical text, they were translated from Greek by occasion, yes, not systematically. But Latin logical texts were translated systematically, and by the middle of the 20th century, yes, when Kubitsky translated not the first time, but he translated the modern translation of categories of Aristotle into Russian. He used the completely different terminology than our theologians used to translate the dialectics of Damascus, John of Damascus. Because if you know, the dialectics of John of Damascus is compiled partly by the Isagoga by Porphyry and partly by the categories of Aristotle. And you can just see the rather big passages of dialectics of John of Damascus, just as the same as in Porphyry, as the same as in Aristotle. And if you, for example, compare the logical terminology which for the contemporary times used in our theological community of Russia, you can find the very big difference. And that's why Valery Vladimirovich Vorobyov decided to make the new translation of Isagoga and the new translation of dialectics of Damascene, because he wants to unify, yes, to unify the theological tradition and the educational, institutional tradition. Because sometimes the terms which are translated in theological tractator, yes, these terms, they sometimes fit more with all the connotations of the Greek words. If, for example, of course, theologians, they use iskus, and it fits better with what you can see in Latin and Greek.
Right, thank you. Yeah, that makes sense, I suppose, also because it seems like in the Greek tradition, there's maybe a more narrow sense of what empiria is, where it's this thing between sensation and knowledge, whereas in Latin texts, you sometimes get this sort of ambiguity where even a single act of, say, sensitive intuition is experimental. And so it seems like even just a single act of sensation is an experience, whereas it's not obvious in the Greek terminology. And so one can, I guess, find differences in how it's perceived, which would be interesting. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, and certainly there's a lot of talk on experience in Latin spiritual literature, sermons and so on, like Bernardo Clairvaux, etc. Experience with no idea about what, with no thought about Aristotle in mind. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for this. Well, not very esoteric text for, well, it is an esoteric text, but still many of us here, well, some of us here study things like that. Well, thank you. And see you on the 4th of May with Milo Creamy's talk. Thank you very much, Oksana.
Thank you very much that you have found the time to listen to this topic.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
See you soon.